Okay, guys, so let's jump into the blood work from when was this? This was on September 22nd. So at this point, we are over 22 months off of testosterone and off of anabolic steroids. So I'm going to get labs done again in November or December, which will mark 2 years off testosterone and anabolic steroids. So I think that'll be another interesting time. And I'm going to do a more comprehensive panel at that point in time. But I just want to get something done because I hadn't since March. As you can see, March 15th was the last time I had everything done. So some interesting things here. We'll start off white blood cells 5.9, whereas they were 5 before. And obviously, with white blood cells, you kind of would rather be in the middle here, really in that 5, 6 range. If they're higher, it's indicative that you're fighting off an illness. But if they're too low, your immune system's probably not functioning properly. So you don't want them super low, and ideally you don't want them super high, so this is a good spot to be in. Any elevation typically means you're just fighting off an illness. This is interesting. Red blood cells came up significantly. This may not look like a lot on paper to go from 4.45 to 4.98, but that's actually a pretty significant jump in red blood cells, which this is a 6-month time period, so that's indicative of my body bouncing back. I'm pretty happy with that. So that's a substantial jump. I'd like to get the red blood cells in the mid-5 range because that would raise my hematocrit and hemoglobin even further, which again, similar to the white blood cells, you want hematocrit and hemoglobin kind of in that middle period, in that middle area. You don't want them too high, you don't want it too low. But look at hematocrit. It jumped up significantly from 39.7 in March to 44.3. Hemoglobin 13.7 to 14.8. So all of these red blood cell type indicators rose substantially. And that tells me that really I am bouncing back. In the last 6 months, this is probably the biggest jumps that I've seen in terms of these numbers. Sorry, I got a bug on the screen. So I'm really happy with that. 44.3, I don't think I've been that high at all since I came off anabolics and testosterone. That's the highest I've been. So I'd like to have my hematocrit around like 47. That'd probably be ideal for me, but definitely coming back. Happy with that. Neutrophils, lymphocytes, these are two of the white blood cells, two types of white blood cells. And they're, pretty stable range. The ratio, neutrophils to lymphocyte ratio is 1.5, which you want that ratio to be close to 1 to 1. That's just a general marker you can look at for inflammation. That's why they have that in there. This ratio indicates the level of inflammation. So really anything below 2 to 1 is pretty dang good, but 1 to 1 would be about what you'd want to shoot for. 1.5 is good though. I'm not worried about that. So we'll keep going here. So eosinophils is another type of white blood cell. That one is really high. Not like really high, actually. I shouldn't say that. It's higher. But this this elevates when you have allergies. So in East Tennessee, there is always it's basically always allergy season, and that's why that's elevated. We get our spring allergies and then we get our fall allergies. So that's why you see that at 0.6. But again, not crazy high or anything. Nothing really to worry about there. That's the main stuff from the complete blood count. The complete metabolic panel here, glucose 77, whereas it was 90 before. So, glucose may not have as much merit as like fasted insulin levels, but it's still a nice indicator to see glucose so low. I don't know if I've ever been at 77 for a fasted glucose level. So that's kind of nice. It's maybe indicating my insulin sensitivity is pretty good right now. But I will, when I do the more comprehensive panel in November or December, I will do fasted insulin. I'll have that checked. And A1C, which A1C is a 90-day, indicates the last 90 days of your glucose level. So that it's like the mean of your 90-day glucose level, the average. So I'll get those two checked on the next one. BUN, we got our kidney functions here, all with BUN, creatinine, and EGFR. So BUN, that can somewhat elevate from protein intake, and then creatinine can elevate from body weight and muscle mass. So basically, as long as those are in range, I'm not worried about them. 1.13 is good. And you'll notice here 1.13 compared to 1.0. These can also be affected by hydration levels. So there's a number of factors that can kind of skew these. I just generally want to see them in the normal range. Hydration levels, body weight, and muscle mass are going to be all things that skew these to a degree. So cystatin C would again be more comprehensive. It would give us a greater indicator, but I'm not worried about my kidneys at all. I don't need to get a cystatin C checked more than once every year or so, maybe once every couple of years, because I'm 220 pounds right now, guys. I'm 100 kilos, and I'm not on anything, and I'm not worried about my kidneys. Those are really good indicators. Not worried about anything at all. Again, the GFR, glomerular filtration rate, which is a general indication of kidney health, this would be much higher on a cystatin C test. So even though this is 89 based off of the creatinine calculation, this is just a calculation off of creatinine, that would be probably 110, 115 on a cystatin C test, if not higher, 120. So again, this is somewhat, you have to take it with a grain of salt, but pretty good results with the kidney functions. Let me see here. Electrolytes, we got sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, all the things, carbon dioxide, all normal. Potassium, you just don't want to get crazy high. You start seeing this in the upper 5, 6 range. That puts your heart at risk of something bad happening, dangerous. So you're typically not going to see that in someone's electrolytes out of whack unless they're on diuretics, or if they're doing like a giant water cut. I've seen these numbers go where what happens on a water cut is sodium is going to tank. Sodium will get really low, and then your potassium is going to jack up really high. That's what we see on a water cut. So water cuts are dangerous because they throw off your electrolyte balance substantially. So if I see a guy cutting weight for a meet, we'll see the potassium go through the roof and sodium will be low. But it's really a temporary thing. That's why water cuts can be dangerous. A little fly in here or something. So I don't know if I'm even going to cut at all in the future. We'll see. Just want to walk in and just try to be as strong as possible. So the albumin to globulin ratio, truthfully, I don't know a whole lot about this. This is a little skewed here. I could read into it, and I did read into it at one point. My albumin's okay. It's really the globulin that's pretty low here. So that's what's skewing the ratio more than anything. Which, let's take a look at globulin. Globulins are a group of proteins in your blood. They are made by your liver. Made in your liver by your immune system. They play a role in liver function, blood clotting, and fighting infection. So, I mean, let's just look here what it says in the general. So it could be an autoimmune disorder. Again, I'm not going to be too concerned about this. This is typically not skewed. Globulin to, or let's do a albumin to globulin ratio. So let's see what this says. Again, I'm not really concerned about liver or kidney disease. My liver and kidney functions are perfect. But I'll keep an eye on it, obviously. This is something I'm going to have to read more up on. So, could be something with the immune system there. But I'll keep an eye on that. 2.1 was the last one. This is 3.1. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Liver enzymes, AST and ALT, normal range 24, 26. Those can get somewhat elevated from training as well, but pretty good range there. Now this is the one that's going to catch some people's attention. The lipid panel with LDL, HDL. So you're going to say, what happened here to make total cholesterol jump so much from 184 to 237? So I was taking twice a week. I was taking rosuvastatin, which is Crestor, just 10 milligrams. I was taking it Mondays and Fridays preceding this. So actually, at the time of this March blood test, I was doing rosuvastatin once a week, 10 milligrams. That's why. That's a statin, obviously. Statins lower cholesterol and triglycerides. So that's why I stopped taking the statin, and that's about a month before this, and that's why you see the total cholesterol rise about 50 points. Interestingly enough, triglycerides didn't rise that much. 82 is still a little higher than I would like. I'd like to get that in the 60s. But my diet wasn't entirely perfect preceding this. So triglycerides are also another very important indicator of insulin sensitivity. Play a much bigger role in heart health, I'd say, overall than even cholesterol. So triglycerides I'd like to get a little lower to increase my insulin sensitivity, but my diet was not entirely perfect leading up to this. And then the drop in the statin is why cholesterol rose a bit. Now I also changed my diet up to more of a carnivore MD Paul Saladino type diet where I started eating a pound of grass-fed ground beef per day, lots of egg yolks, and lots of fruit. So I was more or less eating the diet he outlines, which will raise your cholesterol from the red meat and egg yolk consumption, also the drop in the statin. But I was eating some other things along with it. I probably had like days where I had pizza and stuff and some of these other things. So the diet still could be cleaned up a little bit. I do want to convert fully to that diet. I did cut out the chocolate milk. It was making me feel terrible. So I know someone called me out on that, and they're correct. But I think the beef and the egg yolks and all that is allowing me to more optimize my hormones. So I'd only been on it a couple weeks before this, but you can see LDL went way up from the red meat consumption and then dropping the statin 166. HDL also went up, and I was eating like butter and stuff on my beef and things like that. Now, I'm not hugely concerned with this yet. Now, I know there's different schools of thought in regards to cholesterol levels and regards to how much saturated fat plays a role in it and dietary cholesterol and all that. I've researched all this stuff. So I'm going to get lipoprotein little a checked on my next blood test, which I've had very high lipoprotein little a levels in the past, and lipoprotein little a is perhaps a greater indicator of heart disease risk than LDL. So I'm thinking if I can get my lipoprotein little a down, which lipoprotein little a goes down through higher saturated fat intake. So saturated fat lowers lipoprotein little a, whereas unsaturated fat raises it. So I'm thinking here, my train of thought is if saturated fat, I've increased it drastically, which is why you see the higher LDL. But if my lipoprotein little a level drops significantly, it'll be worth it because we'll cancel out the lipoprotein little a and we will see a little bit of a jump in LDL. I'm more concerned about the lipoprotein little a, so I'm trying to run this experiment to see if it brings it down. If I avoid processed foods, seed oils, and then eat higher saturated fat, how much will that reduce the lipoprotein little a? So I wasn't totally following the diet at this point in time, and I'd only been on it for about 3 weeks to modification. So I want to get a greater idea of it in the future. But I'm really going to keep an eye on the lipoprotein little a, cutting out seed oils and seeing if the saturated fat intake actually lowers that. That's why I'm not super concerned about the LDL. Now, I did do a calcium coronary artery score, a CAC score, when I was 27. I had a 2. So ideally you want to be a 0. This was in the full crux of taking tren and all the things for years, all the anabolic steroids. So I did have a little plaque at 2 level. So I'm going to get this rechecked again in the next couple of years, maybe. I was thinking the latest I'd wait for a calcium artery score would be 35. And if I saw my calcium levels go through the roof in my arteries, I would also make modifications. But from what I've seen, LDL can be high and you can have a 0, CAC score, so long as you're avoiding the seed oils and sugar and all that kind of stuff. So it's the oxidized LDL that's the biggest concern, which this doesn't show the oxidized LDL, but oxidized LDL can come from things like seed oil and sugar. So this is a long explanation for why I'm not super concerned with this because I think the statin was also tanking my hormone levels. I've gotten much stronger since I've stopped it. And I was only taking it, guys, once or twice a week, the statin. And I'm already getting way stronger. So I think that was definitely inhibiting my my strength and my hormones. So I've kind of changed my school of thought on medications. And right now I've been taking vitamin K2 again all year to also try to reduce the plaque buildup in the arteries and clear it out, which over time vitamin K2 can reverse arterial plaque. It can take years, but it can do it. So I take vitamin K2 every day along with vitamin D3. And the other supplement I take is B complex for energy levels to lower homocysteine levels. And hopefully the B complex will also raise my hematocrit further in my red blood cells. I take Chanca for kidney stones. So those are the 4 supplements I take. That's it right now. Now TSH, this is going to be fascinating to you guys as well. This was from an iodine experiment. I've been taking supplemental iodine, 5 milligrams of iodide, or of iodine I should say, sorry, and 7.5 milligrams of potassium iodine. This was in the past. I wasn't doing this preceding this. So 9.08, it bumped my TSH up to initially. I've been on iodine for about a year. And I talked to a thyroid specialist about this where I got the idea with selenium. And it jacked my TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, up to 9.8, 9.08. But then it eventually came down to 4.3. Now my TSH has always been anywhere in the 3 to 4.5 range. So since this test, I was taking iodine and selenium preceding this at high doses. I'm going to stop the iodine. I've stopped it basically because I ran out a couple days ago. I'm going to stop the iodine and selenium, and I'm going to see what happens as things stabilize on the next blood panel. I've never really been below 3, so I've always had a little bit of hypothyroidism, a small degree, whereas my T4, T3, all that's been in the normal range. So 4.3 is honestly too high. I'd say you want to be closer to like 1.5, but I'm going to see what happens when I take out the iodine and selenium and see if this rebounds lower. Because I've been on iodine for about a year at the high dose, which is why you see this crazy high 9.08 number. So we're going to see what happens there. Now, iron has come up since March. 274 iron binding capacity from 248. That's a pretty substantial jump. Overall, the iron number 2, 67 and 93. So again, I'm seeing indications here on all these labs that my hormones are rebounding in the last 6 months substantially, which I felt so much better in the last 6 months. Iron has gone up, hematocrit's gone up, red blood cells. All these things are showing that I'm rebounding. Iron saturation has gone up. So I feel like my body's bouncing back big time in the last 6 months. Now, the part everybody wants to see, FSH and LH and total testosterone. So LH was honestly a little low here. I was kind of surprised by this. I'm not going to yet. I'm probably going to wait till the next labs and see if LH is any higher. But theoretically, if I raise my LH, my test would come up even further. So Fedosia agrestis would be one of the main things to look at here. Also, seriously, the bull testicles, Orchic PMG would be another thing I might look into to raise LH. But I'm not going to do that yet. I just want to ride it out with the supplement protocol of Chanca for kidney stones, which isn't going to show up on labs. I just have them prone to kidney stones. So that's another reason with the diet changes, avoiding oxalates. I can avoid the kidney stone issues. And I'm no longer peeing blood, knock on wood. So that was from kidney stones. I got a CT scan done. The peeing blood thing was entirely from 2 to 3 millimeter kidney stones. All my organs looked perfect, by the way. My kidneys looked perfect. My heart looked perfect. All my organs were perfect when I got the CT scan to check for cancer and stuff. Because if you're peeing blood, hematuria, you're going to be nervous about that. So LH went down a little. Don't know what that's about. It can fluctuate, though. Truthfully, it can fluctuate. But I'm not going to write anything yet as far as Fedosia. But if I brought up the LH, that could potentially raise test. FSH has stabilized for the most part, right in the middle of the reference range. Now for the fun stuff. Testosterone 406 from 365. Again, 406, people are going to say that's low, and it is. 406 is nowhere near optimal. I feel like 700 naturally would be about optimal. So I've still got a ways to go, but I do have a lot of things that point to things trending in the right direction as far as if I raise LH with Fedosia, that would bump this up, I'd say possibly 100 points into the fives. I feel way better. There's clearly, we're seeing my hormones rebound here. Even indicators like estradiol, it's a small jump from 12.4 to 15.7. This would ideally need to be about 30. But these are all indicators that things are coming back slowly. And I think with the diet changes, avoiding processed foods and things that would disrupt my hormones, I think there are going to be some substantial changes coming up. So I've made, 406 isn't great, but I think it's going to be even higher on the next one because I am getting stronger. And I wanted to get uric acid tested just to see if that played a role in the kidney stones, which it's normal. That's not where my kidney stones are from. My kidney stones are calcium oxalate kidney stones. That's what the problem is. So basically, to wrap it up, the major things, the major takeaway points from this would be everything's rebounding. Over the last 6 months, we've seen estradiol go up, red blood cells, hematocrit, iron, testosterone. This is it's small changes, but it's significant enough that we could see substantial changes in the next 6 months. I'm definitely rebounding. I feel way better. Everything has come up, and I think there's a lot more room to go here. And I think with the diet changes, you got to understand as well, my diet up to these labs, counting out the last 2 weeks, had been pretty subpar. I got called out on it by somebody, and they're 100% right. I think I can really influence my hormones by eating more beef, grass-fed beef, eating more egg yolks, things like this. And it will affect the cholesterol numbers, but I think if lipoprotein is in control, which I need to check on the next one, we'll be okay. I'm also going to get C-reactive protein checked on the next one to see inflammation levels. But I feel encouraged. I cut out the statin, no medications right now. I think that was disrupting my hormones as well. And right now my supplement protocol, like I said, Chanca Piedra, which is an herb used for kidney stone prevention. And then I'm also doing B complex, vitamin D3, 10,000 IUs of that. And then Super K, which is vitamin K2 and K1 from Life Extension. So 4 supplements, that's it right now. And I think vitamin D3 and vitamin K2 are essential for everyone. But I'm also trying out B complex to see how that helps. And then the Chanca I'm just taking for the kidney stones. So cut out medication on those 4. Diet's been cleaned up substantially. Pound of grass-fed ground beef per day. About 5 egg yolks per day. Just really trying to cut out the processed foods and see if that also helps rebound things. So I know this isn't for everyone, but I will do another update like this before my next meet, which will be over 2 years, 25 months. The next meet I do, December 17th, I'll have been 25 months off testosterone and anabolic steroids. Body weight's about 100 kilos, 221 pounds. I'm 6 feet tall. And we're going to see how this goes. Training feels amazing. I feel really, really good. Things are not perfect quite yet, but we're seeing really positive changes and indications on the blood work. So appreciate you guys watching, and I'll make another video like this in the future.